Hello, this is Alex Dyer. I'm the Canon the Ordinary here for the Episcopal Church in Colorado, and I am with retired Bishop of Newark, Mark Beckwith, who has not taken any time off in his retirement and is into new ministries, and the season of ministry is taking on a new form, which I thought would be particularly relevant to us here in Colorado. Greetings, Bishop Mark. How are you?
I'm good. Good. Nice to be with you, Alex, and to see behind your head the beautiful snowscape of Colorado. I'm in New Hampshire. We don't have snow yet, but we will, and it's wonderful to be here as well.
Yes, I wish it were true. It's not quite snow yet, but who knows? It's Colorado. It could happen any day. Greetings, Mark, and I want to talk a little bit about what you've been up to these past 2 years with something called Better Angels, particularly with November 3rd coming up, the election day, and how that relates to the Episcopal Church in particular.
Yes, and let me start with Better Angels, now called Braver Angels. It came into being immediately after the 2016 election. It was felt, and indeed many of us experienced, that there was a lot of polarization in the country, and a group of people came together and said, what can we do to depolarize America? And what Better Angels did, so-called drawing on Lincoln's first inaugural, appealing to the better angels of our nature. We've since changed the name to Braver Angels, because we found out that another nonprofit already had Better Angels. So Braver Angels is now the name, and circumstances require us to be braver. But what Braver Angels did and does is bring people together across difference. And the difference is red-blue difference. 90% of people identify themselves as red or blue. Brings them together in equal numbers, not to pull one side to the other or to convert, but to be together in an organized way with civility and mutual respect to see if something can emerge. What can we discover? So I've been involved with Braver Angels for the past 2 years. I refer to it often as the secular version of the Anglican movement. We were created 500 years ago in the tension between Catholicism and Protestantism, and we claimed the middle ground. So as Episcopalians, we have in our DNA this tension. Now, we haven't lived in it well all the time, but when we are at our best, we can claim that tension, and in the midst of that tension, see something else emerge. So Braver Angels has been around for a couple of years. They're for 4 years. There are affiliates in every state with coordinators who convene conversations. We've had over 1,000 of them around the country over these 4 years. And then there have been other opportunities for people to gather together, depolarizing workshops, depolarizing within strategies. Now we have one-on-one conversations that are self-guided, but with a clear curriculum between rural, urban, black, white, red, and blue. And as we approach the election, we came up with a new initiative, which is why you have me on today, called With Malice Towards None. And With Malice Towards None is drawing from Lincoln's second inaugural, With Malice Towards None, with charity for all. And With Malice Towards None is designing to do is to invite religious communities, colleges and universities, and civic organizations to pre-commit to working through the divide that is becoming more and more tense and problematic as we approach the election. And so we're inviting congregations and individuals in congregations, let me speak to that specifically, to sign a pledge or sign or embrace a pledge. We're learning that some people say, I don't sign pledges except to the baptismal covenant, but they embrace the pledge. And let me read it for you. Regardless of how the election turns out, I will not hold hate, disdain, or ridicule for those who voted differently from me. Whether I am pleased or upset about the outcome, I will seek to understand the concerns and aspirations of those who voted differently and will look for opportunities to work with people with whom I disagree.
Mm.
And a brief reflection on that pledge. It says, I will not hold hate, ridicule, or disdain. It may be the case that after the election, some of us may have all or some of those feelings, disdain, ridicule, maybe even hate for someone who voted for the other side. Those emotions just bubble up, they burst forth. What the pledge invites us to do is not to hold on to those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
That we can aspire to the better angels of our nature, not hold on to them, and to listen to the other side. There will be great temptation if people are pleased with the outcome to gloat,
Mm-hmm.
or if they are upset about the outcome to feel no end of despair. And there are forces and there are voices out there on all sides that are asking us to line up one way or the other. It's a common thing in moments of crisis, and I think we're moving toward a crisis if we're not already there, that some people respond in despair, which
Mm-hmm.
leaves them emotionally and spiritually paralyzed. That's one end of the continuum. The other end of the continuum is to be angry, to be furious, to lash out that way. We are calling upon people to engage in this other space, a prophetic space, a place of hope, of courage, of blessing. And there are moments when people don't think that we're able to do that, but as Americans, and particularly as Christians, and more specifically as Episcopalians, we need to do that.
Mm.
We need to do that to gather together in spite of difference.
Now, of course,
so we have a menu, please.
I was going to say, of course, it doesn't apply to social media now, does it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean,
well,
that's one of the big things I think is a real tough thing to do, because I even find myself, if I can spend a time for confession, social media, the allure of forwarding something on that seems to gloat or to really kind of be polarized, or maybe not even represent the entire truth. And sometimes that's done knowingly or even unknowingly, to do that, to really kind of have those points where you just kind of pass it on, or I see somebody coming up in my Facebook feed, and I think, how could they believe that, type of thing.
Well, yeah, one of the gifts of Braver Angels, and one of the commitments that it makes, is that it convenes people together.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we haven't been able to meet in person since the COVID pandemic shut everything down, but we have lots of Zoom gatherings that are really quite effective. We learned how to do them very well, to bring people together. So it's not anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
It's not anonymous. And with the commitment that we can be in relationship with one another, mm-hmm. even though our differences make that difficult. And so we're asking congregations to pre-commit to a series of events. We have a 4-week outline, a template for what congregations can do leading up to the election, beginning with the weekend of October 9th through 11th. Mm-hmm. And Alex will provide that to all of you. And then we have a menu of options after the election. Initially, we thought that would be on November 4th. Increasingly, it's becoming clear that November 4th is not going to be the day when we're going to know definitively how this all plays out. But when we do know the results of the election, what we're inviting congregations to do is to invite those who are pleased with the outcome to gather together and to have a worship service that we've designed, a template that people can adapt to their own situation and their own context, and to identify the moment that we're in, that it's difficult, and that we want to work together. And so that would be one meeting. And then the next night or soon thereafter, to invite those who are upset about the outcome of the election. So, and our thought there is that people are going to feel raw and vulnerable, and they need to feel safe. And we're inviting them to come to a place where either it's Zoom or in person, where they can gather and be with people who have approached the election in the same way. And then after those two meetings, we're inviting people to gather together again, equal number of people who are upset, equal number of people who are pleased. And we have designed, and this is a Braver Angels sort of staple, a fishbowl exercise where people are listening to one another and trying to draw out, are there some commonalities between both sides? And again, Alex will provide those resources to you. As time goes forward and the temperature gets higher and the tension becomes more and more difficult, we are working on what we're calling election crisis group activities, if only to hold each other's hands as we prepare for the election. We can anticipate, certainly have heard this, that regardless of the outcome, that the losing side will claim that the election is stolen. And we can anticipate there will be a period between the end of the election and knowing finally and formally who the winner is. That's going to be a very difficult time. And we're offering prayers and sermon talking points and processes whereby people can hold together. We're calling it Holding America Together because, again, there are forces and voices that want to keep us apart.
Yeah, and I think those voices that want to keep us apart are very powerful. And it's just so countercultural to be in the space that you're calling people to be in. And I think there's a lot of it's just such an unfamiliar space that we can't even hardly recognize it sometimes. I think a lot of times we go to the, we can all just get together, and ignore our differences, right? And just have this thing where there's this stuff we just don't talk about. I don't know. Maybe that's what, your family gatherings at Thanksgiving may look like or something like that too, where we just don't talk about those things. But I think what I hear you saying is you're inviting us to a space where we can share those differences. So maybe you can give an example or an illustration of kind of what that looks like, because I think it's this deep kind of thing too. So how two diametrically opposed people, and we have all this culture kind of telling us that we should not like each other, that we should be, there's those people and then there's those people. Can you at least maybe give us a glimpse of what that looks like?
Example. Braver Angels convenes debates on issues of a common concern that capture us at a very, very deep level. And one of the other hats that I wear is I am the bishop liaison for a group called Bishops United Against Gun Violence. And I've been working in that arena for a long time. And what Braver Angels did is convened a debate on the Second Amendment. And the way it worked, it was really quite powerful for me, is it alternated. People who, I can't remember exactly the resolution, the Second Amendment should not be abridged or challenged under any circumstances. And people who spoke for that were what I would call gun rights people, and they spoke about it from their perspective. And then people who spoke against it were gun violence prevention people. And there's a big, big chasm, as we all know. And the way Braver Angels did it, it wasn't a debate where one side wins, but rather that you hear people speak in favor, people speak opposed, and then you can ask questions not of the speaker, but of the facilitator. And that way it minimizes character um, uh, uh, challenges or how dare you say that, that kind of thing. It's all couched in respect. And as this debate went on, I had an epiphany where I was able to realize, oh my goodness, the people who express opinions that are very different from mine really believe that. It's core of who they are. Prior to that, often these debates are the other side hears what other people are saying and will offer their response. I can't believe they're saying that. I can't believe they believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, these debates get to a deeper level where we're able to acknowledge, oh, we really believe what we're saying. There is a difference here, and it moves us beyond the soundbite phase and the I have a debating tactic that is going to smash your argument, to move beyond that to a place beneath arrogance and beneath certainty where we can talk with one another. It is not always easy to get, it's never easy to get there, but we can get there. But we can get there. And as we approach this election, we need to get there. And I think we as Episcopalians have a unique role because we've been doing this for 500 years. But for 500 years.
Yeah,
and we've lived through all sorts of tensions, and sometimes we've done it well, sometimes we haven't done it well, but we've always done it. And so, this is a time for us
where does curiosity fit in this?
How do you mean curiosity?
You know, what I hear you saying basically is kind of to get to this deep listening, to put yourself aside or whatever too. In my experience, there has to be kind of a thing of curiosity. Because a lot of times we get to these assumptions, right? If you believe this, then you have to believe this. And you go this kind of this ladder of inference to where we just kind of jump a couple of rungs, you know, and we start to build this narrative about people. You know, if you are progressive, then you have to think all these things. You know, if you are conservative, then you have to think all these things. You know, so, you know, I just want to, you know, if your experience with braver angels, have you seen curiosity kind of play a role of that? Are some people getting curious?
Oh, I think so. And I'll put it in religious terms. And again, I indicate that braver angels to me is the secular version of the Anglican movement. And what it's calling me to do, and I think calling us to do as Episcopalians, is to see the image of God in the other person. Because we're all made in the image of God, imago Dei, which is the Latin term, to see each other in the image of God. And again, there are temptations, and there are voices and forces out there feeding those temptations that don't want us to do that, to restrict ourselves to the silo where we feel comfortable, where we feel safe, and oftentimes that silo is surrounded in certainty, and it shuts down curiosity, and it shuts down creativity. We need to come out of those silos and dare to have the courage to engage with people who are different from us. And there's a rabbi who is an extraordinary theologian named Jonathan Sachs. He wrote a book called The Dignity of Difference. And I think right now we're called upon to claim the dignity of difference in a way that we haven't been before. And I think we have. I think we have the faith, we have the history, and from what I'm hearing, as we develop this initiative around the country, we have the commitment to do it.
So finally, let's start two questions that I think, at least in my head, are kind of related. So one, if there were a priest out there, a rector of a parish, and he or she is saying, listen, I'm just trying to get through COVID. I'm just trying to do it. Like, I don't want to stir the pot. I don't want to kind of have these conversations. What would you say to that priest? And then also, if there were, and I think these are kind of tied to maybe related answers, if there was a parishioner who we get sometimes in Colorado, who comes to say the church shouldn't be political. I come to church to feel good. I don't want to deal with this or whatever, to keep politics to politics, but the church should be separate from that.
Mhm. Well, I think we all, at some level, who claim ourselves as Christians and in the Episcopal branch of the Jesus movement, um, I claim a higher commitment, and that to engage in reconciliation, which is really what this is about, is one of the most important things that we do. A couple weeks ago, John Danforth and a Catholic priest had an op-ed article in the Wall Street Journal, which is a rather red-orienting, conservative publication. And Jack Danforth is an Episcopal priest and former senator from Missouri. And they wrote this article, and they talked about the peace, the liturgical event of the peace. Matthew 5, when Jesus says, you're bringing a gift to the altar, put your gift down and make peace with your brother or sister. That is an act of reconciliation. And we engage in it every week. And it has become, in my 40 plus years of ordained life, a celebration of community. But before that and beneath that, it is an act of reconciliation. It's making the claim that whatever separates us, we can be brought together through the love of Jesus Christ. Mm. And so the person standing next to you, especially if the person standing next to you is the person that we live with, often that's the person we most need to be reconciled with. Yes. And that is a witness that we make in church with malice towards none, is a witness that we're offering to the country. It is not political. It is religious, to my mind. And the root of the word religious is religio in Latin, meaning that which binds us together. Mm. God knows we can identify all sorts of things that separate us. But religious movements, the symbols, the practices, the texts that we use are really designed to bind us together, to heal us as individuals and to heal us as communities. That is something that I think we need to embrace. Now, in the midst of COVID, oh my goodness, the challenges that clergy feel, that dioceses are facing, how to gather, all the rules around that, the exhaustion that people are feeling from one Zoom meeting to another, that needs to be acknowledged. And this election doesn't help because it just adds to the anxiety and the turmoil. But I think if we draw deep down in our tradition and draw on the faith that we dare to claim, we can share that with one another and have a real impact on holding America together and healing the wounds that divide us.
Yeah, I think you talked about the peace, and it is frustrating that because of safety, we can't exchange in that peace. I think another thing we can't do, and this is me speaking as a priest, and everybody has the privilege of doing, but I distinctly remember numerous times during my vocation as a priest, placing the body of Christ in someone's hands who I differed with, and who maybe I was not my best self towards, or they were their best selves towards me, and we were at conflict. But there's something about putting that moment where you put the bread or the wafer in their hand, that just all that erases away, at least for a time. And it's almost like I wish I could freeze and stay in that moment where we kind of, I feel, connect. Where yes. I'm seeing their priest and they're seeing, a parishioner, but it's even deeper than that. It's, one beloved child of God to the other beloved child of God, giving and receiving something.
Yes.
I mean, it's just a beautiful moment that I wish we could hold on to more as a church.
Well, and this with Malice Towards None from Braver Angels, it gives us the opportunity to heal the tension that may be in the church, that is, in a congregation that may have erupted through this election. But at the same time, we're also asking congregations to consider what they can do between election day,
Yep.
November 4th, or whenever we find out the results of the election, and January 20th. It's 77 days. And there's going to be tension approaching the inauguration on January 20th, because either the issue isn't resolved or it has been resolved through constitutional processes, but people are still going to be holding those feelings. One thing that we're inviting congregations to consider, several congregations that we've talked to identify themselves as predominantly red or predominantly blue. If that is the case, to reach across the color spectrum to another religious community, either locally or further afield, and to gather with these 3-hour fishbowl-like workshops that we're proposing after the election, to again build bridges. The political leaders in Washington are not doing that.
I think we talk a lot about this beloved community, but I think to get to that beloved community, we've got to reach that space of what you were talking between these two polarizations, that deep, holy ground, to where we can have conversations with each other, real, genuine, honest conversations where we can hear and listen to each other on a deeper level.
Sure.
Well, thank you, Bishop, for all the work you are doing.
Sure.
We hope some days you can, get out of those hills in Colorado and come to some real mountains, or hills in New Hampshire and come to those real mountains here in Colorado. Show you around or whatever too. This beautiful state.
Yes, I've been there several times. My wife has a cousin who lives there, and it's a wonderful place to be. And I'll leave with on our website for With Malice Towards None is an image of the beginning words of the Constitution. We the people. We the people. And we have the capacity to offer our witness as Christians, as Episcopalians, to bring together, to heal we the people.
It is from your lips to God's ears. I hope it happens. So continue to pray for us, and we will continue to pray for you and all the work that you are doing. Take care.
All right. You too.